The skies above Tarsus Prime, blood red that day, the sun smothered beneath clouds of fire and smoke as pirate ships tore through the colony's defense grid like blades through paper. Sirens wailed across the smog-choked streets, drowned by the roar of plasma engines and the crack of energy fire. The ground trembled beneath the landing struts of cerulean, raiders' blue-skinned giants wrapped in dark armor that shimmered like oil under the burning sky. Workers fled the mines, their faces streaked with soot and terror, scattering into alleys, as their homes were looted and their lives shattered in minutes. Amid the chaos, in the threshold of a prefabbed shelter, half crushed by falling debris, a small boy stood motionless, a silhouette against the orange blaze consuming the settlement. 7-year-old Kyle Morrison had already buried his parents once, their graves carved into the dust of a colony the galaxy had forgotten. He would not lose what little remained. His small hands gripped a rusted pipe pried from under his cot, his only weapon, his only defiance. Heat shimmered in the air, wind carrying the metallic scent of ash, and when the first alien rounded the corner, laughing as he kicked over a burning crate, Kyle didn't hide. He ran straight at him. The cerulean was massive, his muscles corded under pale blue skin, traced with scars that glowed faintly in the firelight, his laughter rolling like thunder when he saw the boy charge. "Look at this one," the alien called to his comrades. "A cub with a stick." Their laughter followed, cruel and echoing, but Kyle didn't stop. He swung the pipe with all his strength, striking the alien's knee. The blow barely made the pirate flinch, but the sound metal against armor, the crack of courage in the face of doom made something ripple through the crowd. "They can't just take everything," Kyle shouted, voice breaking but fierce. "Get out of my home." His face was streaked with grime, his eyes bright with unshed tears that fire could not evaporate. For a heartbeat, the ceruleans hesitated. Then a voice cut through the laughter, deep and resonant, the kind of voice that silenced battlefields. "Enough." The pirates parted, and from the smoke stepped their leader taller than the rest, clad in armor the color of gunmetal storms, a long white braid falling over his shoulder. His eyes were glacial silver, unblinking as they locked onto the trembling boy. Captain Drellick of the Stellar Ravager did not shout or sneer. He simply studied the human child standing before him, pipe shaking in his grip, defiance burning in his eyes. "A human," he murmured, almost to himself. "A small one." One of his lieutenants laughed. "He tried to fight, Captain." Barely a mouthful for the dogs. Drellick ignored him. He crouched slowly until his gaze met Kyle's, the glow of fire painting his scarred face in hues of orange and blue. "What's your name, boy?" he asked. Kyle's throat was dry, but the words came through the smoke. "Kyle Morrison." His voice didn't waver. Drellick tilted his head, intrigued. "You fought," he said quietly. "You knew you'd lose, yet you fought anyway." The boy's jaw tightened. "Because someone has to." For a long moment, neither moved. The crackle of burning metal filled the silence between them. Then Drellick's mouth curved into a faint smile, something predatory, something respectful. He stood, towering over the boy, and deactivated his plasma blade with a flick of his wrist. "Take the boy," he ordered. "Let's see if he's worth that fury." The ceruleans hesitated, surprised. "Captain?" One ventured, but Drellick's tone left no room for question. "Alive." Kyle swung again, desperate, striking Drellick's leg with the pipe, but the captain caught it effortlessly, wrenching it from his grip. "You have spirit," Drellick said. "Keep it. You'll need it where we're going." And as the boy kicked and screamed, the pirates carried him through the burning ruins, past the corpses of the only family he had ever known, up the ramp of a ship that roared like a dragon as it rose into the smoke-choked sky. Below, Tarsus Prime burned to cinders, and above, among the stars, a new kind of storm was born, a human child taken by a pirate who saw not weakness in defiance, but the spark of something the galaxy had forgotten, a will that refused to die. The stellar ravager was less a ship and more a fortress carved from darkness itself, a leviathan of metal and fire drifting through the void with predatory grace. Its corridors were cold, the walls etched with ancient cerulean runes that pulsed, faintly like veins beneath the armor of some sleeping beast. The smell of oil, ozone, and alien musk clung to every breath of air. Kyle Morrison woke on the hard floor of a cargo cell, wrists bound in magnetic cuffs that hummed faintly against his skin. His throat was raw from screaming, though no one had listened. For days, or what felt like days, he had been fed little more than water and nutrient paste shoved through a slot in the door. Yet even then, he refused to break. Every sound outside, the hiss of hydraulic doors, the heavy steps of armored boots, was a reminder that he was surrounded by enemies. But beneath the fear, there was something else, something harder and sharper. The same fire that had driven him to charge a pirate with a pipe refused to fade. He would not cry. He would not beg. He would find a way out. The cell door slid open, one day with a hiss of steam, and Drellick himself stepped inside. The captain filled the room effortlessly, his shadow stretching long across the metallic floor. Still alive, he observed, his voice even, almost thoughtful. Some stop eating after the first night. You didn't. Kyle glared, too proud to answer. Drellick knelt, the faint glow of his armor casting a pale light across the boy's face. Do you know why you're here? Kyle spat the words like venom. Because you're a monster. Drellick chuckled softly, not insulted. Monsters destroy. I build. He reached into a pouch on his belt and dropped something at Kyle's feet, a small loaf of bread, fresh and steaming. The scent hit the boy's senses like an ambush. He hesitated, suspicious. Eat, Drellick said, standing again. You'll need your strength. When Kyle didn't move, the captain sighed. You fought like a beast back there. But beasts die young. Learn to fight with your mind, and maybe you'll live long enough to matter. With that, he left the cell. Kyle didn't touch the food for hours, but hunger eventually conquered pride. When he bit into the bread, something unexpected happened. His chest tightened, not from pain, but from the realization that Drellick could have starved him, yet hadn't. The next day, the door opened again. Two ceruleans dragged Kyle to a wide chamber lined with steel pillars and holographic training grids. Weapons of all shapes gleamed under sterile light swords of ionized plasma, curved daggers that vibrated. With barely contained energy, staffs charged with shock conduits. Drellick stood at the center, his long braid tied back, his expression unreadable. You wanted to fight, he said. Now you will. He tossed Kyle a weighted rod, a training weapon nearly too heavy for his small arms. The boy caught it, staggered, but refused to drop it. The room smelled of heat and ozone as Drellick ignited his own practice blade, its energy core flickering white-blue. Attack me. Kyle hesitated only a second before lunging, swinging wildly. Drellick sidestepped effortlessly, disarming him with a flick of his wrist. The rod clattered to the floor. Again. The next strike met the same fate, and the next. Over and over, the boy charged, only to be deflected, tripped, thrown. Sweat and fury mixed on his skin. His arms ached, his chest burned. You're toying with me, he shouted. Drellick's expression never changed. No, I'm teaching you. When Kyle collapsed, panting, the captain crouched and met his gaze. Rage without focus is suicide. You think your anger makes you strong, but it blinds you. Kyle's small hands clenched into fists. Then teach me how to make it hurt them. Drellick's eyes glinted like starlight on cold metal. Good, you learn fast. He turned away, signaling for the guards to take Kyle back. That night, bruised and exhausted, Kyle lay awake in his cell, staring at the ceiling lights that flickered like distant suns. He hated Drellick. He hated the ship. But somewhere in that hatred, a strange feeling began to grow: respect, or perhaps recognition. The captain had seen something in him no one else had: potential. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of pain and defiance. Training, failure, brief rest, more training. Drellick never praised him, never coddled him. Yet each time Kyle rose from the floor, the captain's faint nod was all the approval he needed. On the 7th day, during another brutal spar, Kyle feinted left and swung low, striking Drellick's knee with the rod. The impact echoed across the chamber. The captain staggered half a step. For the first time, Kyle saw surprise flicker across the alien's face. Drellick's laugh followed, deep, genuine, startling. "There," he said. "Now you begin." Kyle collapsed to one knee, breathless but grinning despite the pain. For the first time since Tarsus Prime burned, the boy felt something like victory. And in that moment, Drellick knew he had found something worth more than any stolen treasure. Human child with a will strong enough to carve his own place among the stars. Years slipped through the void like dust in a sunbeam, and the boy who had once swung a pipe at giants became a young man shaped by steel, fire, and will. The stellar ravager was no longer a prison, it was a crucible. Kyle Morrison had grown into his frame, tall for a human, his muscles lean from years of combat drills, his reflexes honed sharp as the blades he now wielded. The crew no longer called him the whelp. Some avoided him out of respect, others out of quiet fear. He had fought every day for that change, not with rage alone, but with calculation, patience, and precision, the traits Drellick had drilled into him until they replaced the restless fury of his childhood. The captain's lessons had become second nature. Watch before striking, adapt before attacking, control before killing. By the time Kyle turned 18, he no longer needed a cage or a keeper. He was a cerulean raider in all but color. Yet the fire in his human eyes, the relentless defiance, remained. It was that same spark Drellick trusted when he gave Kyle his first command. "Dante Station," the captain said in the command deck's dim light, the stars reflecting off the polished plates of his armor. "A luxury hub for the outer rim elite. The vault inside holds data crystals, trade bonds, rare minerals, enough to feed a small colony for a decade." Kyle stood at his side, clad in compact armor, custom forged to fit his lighter frame. "And security?" he asked. Drellick's mouth curved faintly. "Formidable. But that's why you're leading the infiltration." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. Tex, the cerulean first officer, his face marked with lightning-shaped tattoos, stiffened beside the captain. "With respect, Captain," Tex said, his tone edged with disdain. "The boy hasn't led a raid." He's ready," Drellick cut him off. "He thinks like us. Fights better. Sees what we miss." Tex's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. As Drellick turned away, Kyle caught the venom in the lieutenant's glare. It wasn't just jealousy. It was betrayal waiting for a moment. That night, as the stellar ravager slipped into the Vantis sector under cloaked engines, Kyle stood in the shuttle bay with his small strike team. The hum of the launch clamps echoed like a heartbeat. He felt the weight of the mission, the weight of Drellick's trust, the weight of the crew's doubt. Yet beneath it all, a strange calm held steady. Fear was gone. Only focus remained. "We go for the central vault," Kyle said, voice low and steady through his helmet cones. "No unnecessary kills. We're thieves, not butchers. Get in, get out, alive." The pirates exchanged uneasy glances at the word alive. Ceruleans prized glory, not restraint. But none dared question him now. When the shuttle detached and coasted silently toward the bright halo of Vanta's station, the human's pulse barely quickened. The station was a marvel of white alloys and gold-lit windows, rotating in the darkness like a crown on an invisible king. As they approached a docking shaft, Kyle noticed something odd: patrol drones looping irregularly, their routes inconsistent with the stolen schematics he'd studied. "Captain," he murmured over comms, "security patterns wrong. Rotations are random. Someone knows we're coming." "Explain," Drellick replied from the bridge. Kyle's eyes flicked across the feed, calculating. "Too many guards at our extraction point, not enough near the vault. They're funneling us into a kill zone. We alter entry waste disposal shaft, lower quadrant. It's monitored but unguarded." Tex's voice cut in, sharp with disbelief. "That's suicide. It vents into vacuum." "Only if you don't close the internal locks," Kyle countered. "We split teams. One hits the decoy entry, triggers the alarm, buys us time. Main force hits the vault from below." Silence filled the channel. Then Drellick's voice came, cool and measured. "We proceed with Morrison's plan." The shuttle banked, diving into the shadowed underbelly of Vanta's station. The waste shaft yawned ahead like the throat of a beast. As they entered, lights flickered, the air thick with metallic haze. Kyle's armor sensors pinged faintly, warning of pressure shifts. He ignored it, leading the way. The walls were slick with condensation, the hum of machinery pulsing all around them. "Cut here," he ordered. Tex, grim but obedient, drew a molecular blade and sliced through the flooring above. The circular hatch fell inward with a hiss of escaping air. The vault glimmered beyond rows of artifacts, data cores, and crystalline orbs suspended in grav fields. "Move," Kyle said, and his team poured in, swift and silent. Within minutes, containers filled with stolen treasures. Then, alarms. "Security breached Sector 4. An automated voice boomed through the corridors. The diversion team had been discovered sooner than planned. "They're closing in," Tex warned. Kyle glanced at his wrist display, tracing red blips converging toward them. "We're not tracked yet," he said, spotting a narrow conduit on the map. "Maintenance shaft to the docking bay. Single file." The crew obeyed without hesitation. The corridor shook as guards fired from behind, plasma bolts ricocheting off the walls. Kyle dropped a smoke charge, cloaking their retreat. They emerged into the bay just as the station went into lockdown. "We've got 20 seconds before we're sealed in," Tex shouted. "Not enough time to power the shuttle." Kyle's mouth curved into a reckless grin. "Who said we're powering it?" He bypassed the ignition sequence, releasing the clamps manually. The air began to thin, alarm screaming. "Hold on to something." The decompression tore the shuttle from the dock like a bullet. It tumbled into open space, spinning wildly until Tex ignited the engines. The stars steadied. Silence fell. Then laughter raucous, breathless, victorious. Back aboard the Ravager, Drellick waited on the bridge as the shuttle doors opened. Kyle stepped out, helmet under his arm, his face smeared with grime and triumph. Drellick handed him a cup of the golden liquor he saved for victories. "To your first raid," he said. Kyle took a sip, coughed, and managed a grin. "I got lucky." "No," Drellick replied, his icy eyes gleaming with pride. "You adapted. That's what keeps men alive." Around them, the crew murmured, some in awe, some in envy. Tex stared from the shadows, jaw tight. But Drellick only looked at his human protégé and said, softly enough that only Kyle heard, "You've earned your place, boy. And someday, you'll earn your own command." In the glass above the captain's chair, the stars reflected two figures, one forged by conquest, the other by survival, standing at the edge of a galaxy that was beginning to take notice of both. The ballroom of Governor Thaler's estate glittered like a false heaven. All glass floors and hovering chandeliers that shimmered in colors too vivid for natural light. Outside, the jungles of Lura Prime glowed faintly under the planet's twin moons, their alien leaves glistening with bioluminescent dew. Within the mansion's walls, the air was perfumed with expensive spice and hypocrisy. Alien nobles in silk exosuits laughed, drank, and whispered deals while security drones floated silently between marble pillars, their sensors glinting like eyes that never blinked. Hidden beyond that spectacle, in the quiet hum of the estate's service tunnels, Kyle Morrison moved through the shadows. The human had long since learned to breathe like a ghost, to vanish between flickers of light. His visor displayed heat signatures in soft gold arcs, showing guards' patrols, overlapping fields of vision, the narrow spaces where one could move unseen. His heart was steady, his mind sharper than the blades strapped to his thighs. One mistake, and we all burn, he reminded himself. Drellick's voice whispered through his earpiece. Report. Perimeter breach successful, Kyle murmured. Team 2 in position. Security lighter than expected. Too light. A pause, then Drellick's even tone. Meaning? Meaning someone wants us here, Kyle said quietly. He crouched beside an access terminal, splicing into the system with a small wrist device. Either Thaler's overconfident, or someone set a trap. Static crackled briefly. Tex's voice, cut in, sharp and mocking. Worried, human? Maybe the governor's too busy throwing parties to notice a few thieves. Kyle ignored him, focusing on the code scrolling across his display. Something was wrong. Too many subsystems offline, too few active guards near the vault. The absence of resistance felt deliberate, rehearsed. He signaled the others to hold position and slipped through an open corridor lined with ornate paintings of Thaler's ancestors. Each face looked down in judgment, their eyes sculpted from polished crystal. The sound of laughter drifted from a nearby terrace. Kyle flattened against the wall, listening. A soft, melodic voice carried through the night air. If you're going to eavesdrop, you might as well step into the light. He froze. The voice was not alarmed, nor afraid. Curious, almost amused. Slowly, he turned the corner and found her. She stood at the railing of the terrace, bathed in the cool glow of moonlight skin, a soft shade of lavender blue, a gown of deep emerald flowing around her like water. Long silver hair cascaded down her back, catching the faint wind. Her eyes, a striking shade of violet, met his without flinching. You're not one of my father's guests, she said with a faint smile. Kyle hesitated, hand near his holster, but not drawing. You should go inside. It's not safe out here. On the contrary, she replied. I disabled the balcony cameras 20 minutes ago. You're safe for now. Her gaze flicked toward the tree line, where the others waited in the dark. Your team is nervous. They should be. Kyle stepped closer, tension coiled in every movement. Who are you? Iona Thaler, she said simply. The name hit like a charge detonating in his chest. The governor's daughter. And you're the human pirate they whisper about, she continued. The one who thinks before he kills? You don't look like a monster. I'm not here to hurt anyone, Kyle said cautiously. That depends, she countered, eyes narrowing slightly. Are you here for the stellar heart? He didn't answer. She laughed softly. Of course you are. Everyone wants it. My father's pride and the Conclave's obsession. The mention of that name, the Astral Conclave, made Kyle's pulse quicken. He'd heard Drellick speak of them only once, his voice colder than usual. Artifact hoarders, who believed power should be preserved for those enlightened enough to wield it. You know about the Conclave? He asked. Iona's expression darkened. I know they plan to use what they collect. They think they can control time itself. The stellar heart is only a fragment, a key to something far worse. Behind her calm voice was something raw, fear wrapped in defiance. Kyle saw it clearly, the same fire that once burned in him on Tarsus Prime. "Why tell me this?" he asked. "Because," she said, stepping closer until he could see the faint bioluminescent veins glowing beneath her skin. "I don't want to see my world become their experiment. And because," her lips curved slightly, "I think you'll live long enough to stop them." Before he could respond, his cum hissed with Nara's urgent voice. "Kyle, movement, multiple signals converging on the west wing. You've been made." Iona's violet eyes widened. "It's a trap. My father's guards are redirecting patrols. Someone tipped them off. Tex, it had to be." Kyle's mind raced. "You need to go," he told her. "And you need to survive," she shot back. "Follow the maintenance tunnel beneath the sculpture garden. It exits beyond the perimeter wall." "Why help me?" he demanded. She hesitated, gaze softening. "Because my father serves those who would enslave everyone. Because I'd rather save a thief than watch an empire rise." The shouts of guards echoed through the corridor behind him. Kyle activated his cum. "All teams, abort. Extraction point Theta. Move now." He looked back at Iona, and for a fleeting heartbeat, something passed between them, recognition, shared defiance, perhaps even fate. "This isn't over," he said. "I should hope not," she replied with a small, fearless smile. Kyle turned and vanished into the dark as alarms screamed across the estate, the stars above Lura Prime reflecting in his visor like the eyes of watching gods. When he returned to the Stellar Ravager hours later, his report was met with silence. Drellick listened without interruption, then asked quietly, "And this woman helped you?" "Yes," Kyle admitted. Tex's cold eyes flickered with feigned surprise. "How convenient." Drellick's gaze lingered on his protégé. "Trust is a dangerous currency, Kyle," he said. "Spend it wisely." But alone, in his quarters, Kyle could still see Iona's eyes in his mind, their color, the conviction behind them, and hear her warning about the conclave. For the first time in years, the human who had learned to think like a pirate found himself dreaming not of raids or riches, but of something far more dangerous. Truth. Dawn on Lura Prime led through storm clouds the color of molten silver, and the city beneath the governor's estate stirred with the uneasy rhythm of a world, unaware it was already at war. The astral conclave had moved faster than anyone expected. By the time Kyle and Drellick's scouts returned from reconnaissance, the conclave's banners, a spiral of gold, etched with constellations, hung from the estate's towers. They had taken over the governor's mansion, declaring it a research site under their jurisdiction. Inside its depths, the stellar heart pulsed behind containment fields, guarded by mercenaries and scientists whose minds gleamed with the fanatic's conviction. And somewhere among them, Iona Thaler was missing. Kyle stood in the Stellar Ravager's command deck, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of the estate. His reflection looked older in the blue light, his jaw set, his gaze shadowed by the kind of determination that came only from guilt. "She warned us," he said quietly. "And now she's their prisoner." Across from him, Drellick leaned against the console, arms folded, face unreadable. "You're assuming she's alive." "She's alive," Kyle said flatly. "They'll keep her until they don't need her." Tex's laugh cut through the silence like a blade. "You risk the crew for one trader's daughter? She played you, human. She lured us into a trap." Kyle's eyes flashed. "If she wanted us dead, we'd be ashes on that ballroom floor." Drellick's gaze shifted between them. "Enough. We need information, not accusations." He turned to Kyle. "You said the conclave wants the heart to control time. How do you know that?" Because Iona told me, Kyle replied, stepping closer to the projection. And because their technology matches what they were developing on Sen-X temporal resonance devices. They're trying to rebuild something ancient, something that shouldn't exist. The heart of eternity, Drellick murmured. The room fell silent. Even Tex looked unsettled. You've heard of it? Kyle asked. Drellick's tone dropped low, reverent. Every cerulean child grows up on myths of it, the artifact that can twist the stars themselves, rewrite cause and effect. We thought it was legend. Kyle stared at the rotating hologram. It's real, and they think humans are the key to unlocking it. Drellick turned sharply. Explain. Kyle hesitated, remembering what Iona had told him that night in the safe house, the Conclave's research into human neurology. The theory that human brains, unlike most species, could temporarily survive direct synchronization with raw cosmic energy. They've been studying us, Kyle said. The adaptability that saved us on primitive worlds. It lets us adjust faster to unnatural stimuli. To them, that means one thing. We're disposable conduits. And you think they'll test this on you? Drellick said quietly. Kyle met his gaze. They already planned to. I'll let them. Tex's eyes widened. You can't be serious. I am. Kyle's voice carried no hesitation. They want a human subject. They'll bring me in alive. While I'm inside, you'll infiltrate through the lower conduits and take the artifacts. Drellick's stare hardened. You're offering yourself as bait. I'm offering a distraction, Kyle corrected. It's the only way we get Iona, and the heart without the conclave detonating half the city. For a long moment, the captain said nothing. Then, with a low exhale, he nodded once. You have one chance, boy. If they detect us too early, we can't help you. Kyle's lips curved faintly. Wouldn't be the first time I had to improvise. The plan was madness, but madness was what the galaxy had always demanded of him. Hours later, disguised in scavenger robes scorched by fake battle damage, Kyle approached the governor's compound under the rising storm. The guards stopped him at the checkpoint, weapons leveled. I'm here for the conclave, he said evenly. Tell them the human you've been hunting has come to surrender. The words tasted like rust, but they worked. Within minutes, he was escorted through the main gates, hands bound, every movement scanned by drones. The corridors reeked of antiseptic and ozone. Cerulean architecture had been replaced with clinical precision glass walls, humming generators, cables that pulsed like veins. When the doors to the central chamber opened, Kyle saw it, the heart fragment, suspended above a circular platform, its glow shifting through impossible colors, each pulse matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. Behind it stood Governor Thaler, still regal, though the conclave sigil now gleamed across his chest plate. His eyes were hard as iron. Mr. Morrison, Thaler greeted, his voice dripping false courtesy. You've caused quite a stir. I aim to please, Kyle said. Tex emerged from the shadows beside the governor, wearing conclave colors, his smirk cold. You see, Captain, he said mockingly, humans make better bait than warriors. You sold your crew for a seat at their table, Kyle said, his voice steady. How long before they decide you're no longer useful? Tex's grin faltered for half a breath, but the gray-skinned scientist behind him spoke before he could reply. Enough talk. Begin the synchronization. Two guards forced Kyle onto the platform. Restraints clamped around his wrists and chest, humming with containment fields. The scientist lowered a neural crown over his head, a halo of light and metal that pressed coldly against his skull. Your brain will either expand or collapse, the alien murmured. Either way, we will learn. The room dimmed as the heart flared alive. Energy surged through Kyle's body, every nerve screaming, but beneath the agony, something awakened. His mind stretched, reaching into wavelengths beyond sight. Time slowed, warped, dissolved. He could feel the quantum threads of reality, twisting around him, memories bleeding into futures, voices echoing backward. In one heartbeat, he saw himself as a child on Tarsus Prime, and in the next, he saw Iona chained in the observation chamber above, eyes wide with fear. "Kyle," she cried, slamming her hands against the glass. "Don't fight it, control it." The words cut through the chaos. Control it. Drellick's lessons echoed in his head. Rage without focus is suicide. Kyle drew in a breath, centering himself. He didn't resist the power, he guided it, redirected it, adapted. The containment restraints dissolved into vapor. The scientists screamed as consoles exploded, lights flickering like dying stars. When Kyle opened his eyes, they glowed with the same prismatic hue as the heart. "Impossible," Thaler whispered, backing away. "He's stabilizing it." Kyle stepped off the platform, the heart fragment floating between his palms, pulsing in rhythm with his breath. "You wanted to see what humans can do," he said, his voice layered, reverberating with something beyond mortal tone. "Watch closely." With a single thought, the energy pulse radiated outward, collapsing the lab's defenses. The observation chamber shattered, releasing Iona, who landed beside him, her skin glowing faintly in the heart's light. "The vault!" she shouted. "The stellar hearts below." "Go," Kyle said. "I'll clear the way." As alarm screamed, Drellick's strike team stormed the lower levels, the Ravager's insignia flashing like a ghost through the chaos. When Kyle and Iona reached the vault, Drellick was already there, plasma blade humming as he cut down the last of the guards. "Nice of you to join us," the captain said, his voice almost amused. Kyle, drained but alive, handed him the stellar heart. Mission accomplished. But before they could retreat, Tex staggered into the doorway, burned and bleeding, his eyes wild. "You think this ends here?" He rasped. "The conclave is eternal. The heart is only 1-3 in total. You've just stolen their invitation to godhood." He raised his weapon, but Kyle didn't move. The man who had once lived by rage now stood perfectly calm. "You talk too much, Tex," he said softly. Drellick's blade flared once, and the lieutenant fell. As they escaped into the rain, the mansion erupted behind them in a wave of blue fire. The stellar Ravager lifted from the surface, engines blazing through storm clouds, carrying its crew and 2 hearts, one of starlight, one human into the endless dark. The stellar Ravager drifted through the silent corridor between stars, its hull still scorched from the battle on Lura Prime. Inside the ship, the scent of ozone and smoke lingered in the air like a ghost that refused to leave. Kyle Morrison stood alone in the observation deck, watching the streaks of hyperspace flow past the glass. His reflection wavered against the endless blue light, his eyes still faintly iridescent from the artifact's touch. Somewhere deep inside, the echo of the heart of eternity still pulsed faint, rhythmic, alive. He could feel time breathe differently around him now. The seconds didn't just pass. They stretched and folded, like pages in a book he had somehow learned to read. Every heartbeat carried the memory of 1,000 possible futures. And yet all he could think about was the present, the soft hum of the engines, the steady rhythm that meant they had survived. The door behind him hissed open. "Captain on deck," Drellick announced, though his voice carried warmth rather than ceremony. He stepped into the light, his armor removed, his braid loose, looking more like a man than the warlord he once was. "Don't call me that," Kyle said quietly, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. "You're still the captain." Drellick's gaze lingered on him for a long moment. "No, boy. I was the fire that burned the galaxy's edges. You're the one who'll decide what rises from the ashes." He gestured to the stars. They'll follow you now. They already do. Kyle turned back to the viewport. Then I need to make sure we're worth following. Behind them, footsteps echoed softly. Iona entered the chamber, her long coat brushing the floor, her silver hair tied back from her face. Her eyes caught the reflection of the stars, violet and luminous, still carrying that strange mix of mischief and defiance. "We've stabilized the containment field for both artifacts," she said, her voice smooth but weary. "The stellar heart's power core is secure, and the fragment from the heart of eternity is—" "Quieter, quieter?" Drellick repeated with a frown. "That thing nearly tore a planet apart." "It's like it's listening," she said, glancing at Kyle. "To him." Drellick followed her gaze. Kyle didn't deny it. Since the synchronization, he could feel it like a low hum behind his thoughts, a connection to something vast and ancient that refused to fully fade. "How long until the conclave regroups?" he asked. "Not long," Drellick answered. "They'll want their toys back. And they'll come with fleets this time, not research teams." Kyle nodded slowly. "Then we find the other fragments first." Drellick chuckled under his breath. "You sound like me 20 years ago. Then maybe you taught me too well." The old pirate smiled, pride and sorrow intertwined. "Maybe." He looked at Iona. "Keep him alive. He's worth more than he knows." "I intend to," she said, stepping closer to Kyle's side. Drellick turned and left, leaving the two of them in the soft blue glow of hyperspace. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Iona reached out, tracing the faint shimmer along Kyle's wrist where the artifact's energy had marked him. "You could have kept it," she whispered. "You could have taken the power for yourself." Kyle's jaw tightened. "Power isn't the point." She tilted her head, curious. "Then what is?" He looked at her, his eyes no longer the hard steel of survival, but something older, steadier. "Connection," he said. "You, Drellick, the crew people who see more than what they can take. The galaxy doesn't need another god. It needs people who remember what it means to fight for something real." Iona smiled faintly. "That's a very human answer." "I'm still trying to figure out what that means," he admitted. "Maybe being human isn't about what we are, but what we choose to become." Outside, the starlight bent strangely, rippling across the glass. For an instant, Iona saw something reflected behind him, a faint, translucent silhouette of a boy holding a pipe, his eyes fierce, defiant. The image flickered and was gone. Iona's breath caught. "Kyle!" He turned, the edges of his reflection moving a heartbeat out of sync with his body. The faint glow in his eyes deepened, colors shifting like a living nebula. "It's still in you," she said softly. "The heart." "Maybe," he answered. "Or maybe I'm just what happens when a human survives something the universe never meant him to touch." She reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm, grounding, utterly alive. "Then let's make sure the universe learns to live with it." Their fingers intertwined, and for a moment, the hum of the ship faded into silence. The stars outside seemed to slow, their trails stretching infinitely long, as if the universe itself paused to watch them. Somewhere deep in the engine bay, the stellar heart pulsed once, echoing his heartbeat. Drellick stood on the lower deck, watching through the glass, his expression unreadable. "You were right, old man," murmured one of the crew beside him. "The human changed us." Drellick's gaze stayed fixed on the stars. "No," he said softly. "He reminded us what we were supposed to be." As the stellar ravager slipped back into the endless dark, Kyle Morrison once, a boy who fought the sky with a rusted pipe, stood at its helm beside the alien woman who had defied her empire. Together, they chased the fragments of eternity, not for conquest, but for balance, their ship carrying the promise of something the galaxy had nearly forgotten. Humanity's greatest power was never strength or domination. It was the ability to adapt, to endure, to love, and to keep moving forward, even when time itself tried to hold them still.